quick. Let's see. Chris, will you read the first paragraph and the title?
Chernobyl disaster leaves radioactive wild boars roaming Germany. Names Germany. Nearly 3 decades after the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, wild boars containing high levels of radiation have been found roaming the German countryside some 700 miles away. The explosion at the Ukrainian plant in 1986 spread a radioactive cloud over Europe. One in 3 of the boars tested in Germany, the eastern state of Saxony, still exceeds legal radioactive limits. Officials says you should not expect that wild boars in the southern Vogtland
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
region are now glowing in the dark. The regulations in Germany and European Union are very strict. Local Environment Ministry spokesman Frank Meyer told NBC News.
Good. Abby, will you read the last paragraph?
Between September 2012 and August 2013, 297 out of 752 boards exceeded legal limits of radiation, particularly the hazardous isotope cesium 137, which have a 300-year half-life and decays slowly. But to get an idea of how strict the regulations really are, experts say that the person would have to eat 13 kilograms of contained meat to get the same low-level radiation effects of being on a
Transatlantic.
transatlantic flight. Saxon boars are particularly affected because of heavy rain in the region directly after disasters, and their diet of mushrooms and other plants that store radiation, according to Richard from Saxony's Mining Association. Germany's boars population has skyrocketed over the past 20 years. Since 2012, hunters in Saxony have been required by law to test every animal they shoot.
Good. All right. So this article is about Chernobyl, which we'll talk about more today. But it says nearly 3 decades after Chernobyl nuclear disaster, the wild boars are still showing signs of radiation. How long is 3 decades? Someone raise their hand. Megan.
30 years.
Yeah, it's almost 30 years. So that's a long time after something's happened that the effects are still showing, right? So how, after reading this article, how is Chernobyl still affecting Germany? How are the effects still affecting the country that we just read about? Yeah.
Because the meat might still be like contaminated.
Yeah, the meat is still affecting, like if someone eats a boar, if someone hunts a boar. The last sentence said hunters in Saxony have been required by law to test every animal they shoot. So if they eat the meat, humans could be contaminated. What else? Think about the environment and the boars. How is the nuclear radiation affecting the environment and then affecting the boars? How is that? Zora?
The boars are getting it from eating the stuff that's dirty.
So after Chernobyl, the ground is still affected, right? And the nature, all the radioactive just stuff that's happened from Chernobyl is still affecting the ground around. Let's see. And why should we be concerned about the boars and all that? That the hazardous stuff is still in the boars. Why should we care about that? Because
Because if we get their meat, it could still be contaminated in Germany.
and then what happens to us?
We get
You guys can understand.
We're
We get
radioactive
sick
now.
And then we get sick, yeah. So this Chernobyl happened in, do you guys know where this happened?
Germany?
Well, no,
Ukraine.
this is affecting Germany, which is near somewhere that it actually happened. Taylor?
Ukraine.
The Ukraine, good. So we talked about, what did we talk about on Friday?
Europe.
Well, what about about the environment.
Oh,
What did we talk about, Jared?
United Kingdom's air pollution.
The air pollution. So now we're going to talk about the Chernobyl and all the nuclear effects it has on the Ukraine. So where is Chernobyl? Do you want to hit the light? That'll work. It's so good. Alright, so where is Chernobyl? We want to try to figure out how this explosion has affected so many countries around. So where is Chernobyl? Chernobyl Nuclear Power Station is located in north central Ukraine. So here's Ukraine. You guys should all know where it is in Europe. And it is north, very north. It's near the border. It's kind of near this lake type area. It's next to the city of Pripyat and just south of Ukraine's border. And so the country right above this is Belarus. Ukraine's capital is located 130 miles south of Chernobyl. So the capital is really close to where this happened. There we go, there's an arrow for you. Alright, so what happened? What in the world is Chernobyl? So workers at Chernobyl were doing an experiment to test a new safety feature in the power plant. And one of the reactors, reactor number 4 at the plant, became unstable and exploded, releasing tons of radioactive material into the atmosphere, land, and water. And so these were the photos taken before. It happened in 1986, and these were the pictures taken before. Here's like the town, and that's reactor number 4. So workers were doing an experiment. So here are a couple pictures of all of it before. The top picture, what do you guys think this is? What do you guys think this is? Abby?
A factory?
Yeah, what factory? Do you think this is where it happened, right? This is the scene of the crime. And this is inside the power plant. This looks really serious, doesn't it? All the buttons. You don't want to mess in there. You don't want to be poking buttons in there. And this looks like just another area that they do experiments. So it looks pretty, big in structure. Let's see. And then this is, I guess, they had a camera inside the factory or the reactor, and when it exploded, this is what it looks like. Alright, so this is, you guys remember the picture that I just showed you, the big factory? The top left picture, and then that's it after. So after it exploded, that's what happened. It's 3 days after the accident. I'm going to read to you guys a quick little detail of how it happened, and you guys just envision it in your mind because it tells you some details that you can picture it happening. Alright, so years later, the full story was finally released of what happened in Chernobyl. Alright, workers at the plant were performing tests on the system. So just imagine those workers in the little room doing all those buttons. They were doing tests. They shut off the emergency safety system and the cooling system against established regulations in preparation for the test. Do you guys think that the safety systems and cooling systems are pretty important? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then they turned them off. So we can imagine it's dangerous now. Even when warning signs of dangerous overheating began to appear, the workers failed to stop the test. Gases built up, and at 1:30 a.m., so in the middle of the night, the first explosion rocked the reactor. So reactor number 4, at 1:30 a.m., boom, it exploded. A total of 3 explosions eventually blew the 1,000-ton steel top right off the top of the reactor. So you can see at the top, I guess, did you guys see all those kind of smokestack looking things on the area? It just blew the lid right off. It was 1,000 tons weight-wise, and it just blew it off. A huge fireball erupted into the sky. Flames shot 1,000 feet into the air for 2 days. So for 2 whole days, this was happening. The entire reactor began to melt down. Radioactive material was thrown into the air like fireworks. Although firefighting was futile, the country we're talking about, Pripyat, 40,000 people were not evacuated until 36 hours after the explosion. So So that's a long time to wait to get people out, isn't it? How long is 36 hours? Raise your hand. Chris?
A day and 2 hours.
A
Actually,
day?
a day and 12 hours.
Yeah, so it's a whole day and a half, right? So they waited a whole day and a half to even get anyone out of that area. And it's dangerous to be around. So potentially lethal rain fell as the fires continued for 8 days. Dikes were built at the river to contain damage from contained water runoff, and the people of the capital were warned to stay indoors as a radioactive cloud headed their way. So can you guys imagine after this exploded, they were just warning people to stay inside because a dangerous cloud was headed their way? So what do you guys think would happen when all of these chemicals get shot into the sky? What happens to the clouds?
Usually how rain evaporates into the sky probably did that and form a huge cloud, so if it rained it would be very dangerous.
Yeah, so imagine, you know how the clouds right now, they take the water up into the air, or up into the cloud, and it forms the cloud, and then the cloud travels, and then it rains somewhere. That's just how the water cycle works. But imagine this stuff gets put into the air and travels. We'll see how far it went. So, if we use our little key, we know what all these mean. So there's Chernobyl right here. And what's this? Just tell me. What's all of this?
Europe.
This is Europe. So the little peach colored or light pink are very little levels of radioactive or radiation. And as it gets darker and darker, almost black, is the very high levels of radiation. So look how far it went. And I'm sure it went into Russia too, but look at all the places it went. And it affected a lot of places near Chernobyl, right? So imagine that tiny little place, the tiny little factory, and look how much it affected. It spread so far. Let's see. Alright, so Soviet Union government. So after this all happened, we had to, the government had to come in, right? The government had to kind of step in and be like, alright, let's see what we can do. So the Soviet Union government officials did not publicly say anything about the explosion until 2 days later, when officials in Sweden, you guys know where Sweden is? The Scandinavian peninsula? Way north of the Ukraine. When officials in Sweden raised worldwide alarm about high levels of radiation. So people in Sweden were like, okay, these little dials are going off. We have dials that can tell you levels of radiation and when it starts getting dangerous. And so people in Sweden were like, okay, our things are going off, what's going on? Because in the UK or in the Ukraine, they didn't make it public. They didn't tell anyone that this happened. They just waited and waited. Why do you guys think they waited? Why would the government wait to tell anyone that this is going on? Savannah.
Because if they didn't want to cause like a bunch of panic for them, like say it never got there, and all these people were terrified, and they were like places were closing down, and people couldn't get things, and it stayed like this for like a long time. Like things would just be ruins.
Chaos, right? So imagine if that happened here. What if something happened here and then the government was like, we gotta get out of here, there's crazy chemical in the air, we're all gonna just die. So we would all be panicking, right? We'd be flocking to like the airport in Atlanta to leave. So this is what they tried to avoid. The Soviet Union tried to be like, all right, we can maybe control this. So this was in '86. So they're like, maybe we can control this. We'll just see. We won't tell anyone. We'll keep it a big secret. But in Sweden, they're like, no, it's coming up to us. Imagine what's going on around you guys. So let's take care of this. So Soviet leader Mikhail something did not speak publicly about the incident until 3 weeks later. And to this day, he denies that there was ever an attempt to cover up what happened. So even to this day, the Soviet leader was like, we didn't cover this up. No. So and they obviously did. They should have told people right away. All right, the evacuation cleanup. Look at this picture. Look at what they're wearing. Yeah, they had to wear okay, so it was Soviet workers were brought in to clean up the nuclear material. These guys right here are known as liquidators. So these are the guys that came in and tried to clean up the mess, tried to somehow get all that nasty, all the chemicals put back into some kind of container so it couldn't get out. But look at what they have to wear. There's like gas masks, big suits. Look at their shoes.